In today's video, we're taking a look at some NHL trade rumors for the offseason. We're talking about the New Jersey Devils. Could their first round pick be in play to acquire an impact player, and who might that be that they could possibly target? We're also looking at the Chicago Blackhawks and the Philadelphia Flyers, as well as the Flyers signing a potentially very key high-profile prospect. And we have some updates from the playoffs, injury updates, signings, and more coming up next. Back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. First up, let's get started with some playoff recaps and some injury updates. First up, earlier today, we saw the Washington Capitals really take it to the Panthers on home ice with a 6-1 victory. The President's Trophy Panthers are now... the President's Trophy winning Florida Panthers are now behind the 8 ball, but down 2-1 against Washington. So that would be I would think we could call a pretty good upset considering where they were in the standings. But obviously the experienced Washington Capitals are not going to be going away easy for Florida, and they're going to have a tough time getting through this first round. And of course, we've seen the Colorado Avalanche take a 3-0 series lead today over the Nashville Predators here as well. But there was a kind of a fluky freak injury to goaltender Darcy Kuemper, who had a stick from center iceman Ryan Johansson of the Preds sneak through like his mask and get him in the eye. I'm surprised that they even made to the point that they could get a stick through there, but listening to some NHL former goalies speak about it, it sounds like some of the goalies do have those the gaps in the mask, the way the mask is made, to have it big enough so they can see better, but there is certainly a risk that comes with that. It's not something that I remember ever seeing before, and I've been watching hockey, regularly for my whole life here, so it's not a rare... So it's a very rare kind of fluky thing that we see happen. So hopefully Kuemper's okay and can come back soon. Francouz came in for the Avs to get the job done today, but they would certainly feel a lot better having Kuemper between the pipes, I think, moving forward. He's a way bigger goaltender, covers a lot more of the net, and certainly is the preferred guy to have between the pipes. Pens and Rangers, as I record this, are just getting underway. Tristan Jarry was on the ice this morning in practice for the Penguins. I believe that was his first time on the ice since the injury, but not ready to go here as of yet. So Domingue goes again today. But Jarry, obviously, it's a sign he's getting closer. And if this series does go 6-7 games, I would think there'd be a better shot at him getting in. I don't know what the odds are if he'd be able to play in game 4 or 5. I would think it's more likely going to be if it goes 6 or 7, but that's just my personal opinion on that front. Of course, in last night's action, we saw some more terrific hockey. The LA Kings fell to the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers really took it to the Kings last night to take a 2-1 series lead. The Lightning fell at home to the Maple Leafs as well, 5-2. Tampa just again did not look sloppy. Nikita Kucherov not having a good series. Toronto has played well. I don't want to take any credit away from them. They did a lot of it too with secondary scoring last night too. Tampa just, I don't know what's wrong with them. They're very just not in sync, not making the smart plays. And Stamkos, Kucherov especially, just not quite themselves are not getting anything accomplished. So we'll see if they can bounce back like they had to before in game 4 and make the series interesting moving forward, or will the Leafs take a stranglehold here with a 3-1 series lead? That's going to be a pivotal game for them for sure. So it'll be interesting to see, of course, where that goes next. The Boston Bruins climb back into their series against Carolina with a big victory here as well. So that narrows that to 2-1. Obviously, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to want to continue battling and hopefully can have some better luck with some goaltenders coming back. Obviously, the young goaltender they have in there now is doing okay, and certainly not his fault that they lost, but at the same time, having Ranta or Anderson in there, I think would make the team feel a little bit more confident moving forward. And the Minnesota Wild once again beat St. Louis last night, so they're now up 2-1 after dropping the first game. So we'll see. I would not be surprised if we see Jordan Binnington start the next game here for the St. Louis Blues. Now, of course, when it comes to some prospect signings, we had a couple new ones here today, including the Winnipeg Jets signing a 6'4" goalie from Finland, who's Oscar Salminen, who's an undrafted guy. He's 22 years old. Been playing in Liga the past few years, and his numbers look really, really good. So, be interesting to see where he fits in their organizational depth next year. But certainly, Finland has produced a lot of terrific goaltenders in the last 10 to 15 years. So it'd be really interesting to see how this guy turns out. But clearly he's got some pro experience in Europe at 22 years of age. You get the good size. It appears to be a pretty good looking prospect, so we'll see where that goes. And another goaltender prospect, very interesting guy here for the Philadelphia Flyers, gets signed today. 25-year-old prospect Ivan Fedotov, who was originally drafted by the Flyers way back in 2015. That's 7 years ago that he was drafted. This guy is 6'8" goaltender, putting up phenomenal numbers playing over in Russia the last number of years. He played for Russia at the Olympics this year, looked pretty solid. He put up stats in the KHL this past year of a .937 save percentage and a .185 goals against. Because of his age, he only gets a 1-year entry level contract. And I know, listening to the Flyers end of season media availability, Chuck Fletcher was optimistic they were going to be able to get him signed. And they were also talking about they're hopeful that he could be the backup next year. At his age, they're hoping he can make the transition to North America and go right into the NHL, and him and Carter Hart could very well be the tandem next season. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more here about the Flyers in a few minutes' time as well. Now, speaking of Russian prospects, there's another Russian player looking to make the jump from the KHL who we've talked about before, and we should, probably find out here in the not too distant future where he's going to end up, and that's Andrei Kuzmenko, who's had a wide range of interests from around the NHL. He started meeting with teams and is expected to meet with some more. I think he's probably only going to end up talking to around a half dozen or so, is what I've understood from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. It's believed teams like the Canucks and Oilers are involved in the mix, but there's certainly others. There's certainly going to be some stiff competition. It didn't sound like Kuzmenko was overly crazy about where he ended up. He's really looking for a place to play for multiple years with a good opportunity. That's kind of his biggest concern. So we'll see. Obviously, I'm sure there's some other teams involved that are coming out of rebuilds. They're looking for additional players they can pick up, and he could be a good either middle six or top six forward, depending on how he turns out. That could be a good find for some of these teams that, potentially without having to give up a bunch of assets. So the Russian forward is getting lots of interest, and we'll see where he ends up. We'll probably have a better idea over the next week or so as a lot of these meetings take place. We also found out today as well that the San Jose Sharks have called a press conference for this coming Tuesday along with Patrick Marleau. So many are expecting that to likely be the announcement of Marleau's retirement. I would imagine he's probably going to be retiring as a Shark. I'm not sure if he'll be working with them in some other capacity or what his future plans are. I know he's got a lot of young kids and a big family, so we'll see what they decide to do. But where he didn't play this year, it's really not a huge surprise. He's kind of already retired, so to speak, but making it official this week. The all-time leader in games played appears to be wrapping things up and making things official. So we'll see where things go on that front. Now, as I mentioned on the trade rumor side of things, we want to look at 3 different teams. Let's start with Philadelphia, since we're talking about Ivan Fedotov and how his signing kind of fits into the mix here. I know the Flyers are a team that we've talked about on the channel here recently, as today with the offseason plan video, looking at what they're likely going to be up to. Now, if with Fedotov now signed, that kind of takes care of goaltending. That to me says a pretty good chance Martin Jones isn't back because he's an unrestricted free agent. Fedotov could be the backup to Carter Hart next year. So that's that. When it comes to their blue line, based on what Chuck Fletcher was saying, I thought there would be a chance that we might see a big move. And I guess I wouldn't completely rule it out. But given the fact that, he's optimistic that they have a good plan in place for Ryan Ellis to help him get healthy. And if they'll know probably by the time we hit draft and free agency, if Ellis is good to go, because the plan to get him there was going to hopefully be around around that 6 to 8 week mark. So by the end of June, they should have a really good idea and will be able to react accordingly based on how he's doing. But if they have a healthy Ryan Ellis, it sounds like they're not planning to do much of anything with their blue line. I mean, they want Ellis to play with Provorov, and that's what the main reason why he was brought over, and that barely got a chance to happen last year. They re-signed Ristolainen, and Ristolainen and Sanheim was the only consistent pair back there really this year that, had any level of success. Not that they had a lot at all, but it's expected that they very well could continue to play together. So that's your top 4D. So, you've got other younger players like Cam York in there, could be fighting for a spot in that third pair and others. So, they may not do much of anything on the blue line to be a whole lot different. So that means that the major part of their retool, rebuild, or whatever Fletcher wants to call it, since he said it was kind of a bit of both, is mostly going to take place within the forward group. He did make comments during the end of season presser that, obviously having a top center would be ideal. That Sean Couturier obviously can't do that load of work all by himself, and having him come back from injury will be helpful, but they certainly need more than just Couturier. So there's him that's going to be there, but it wouldn't be surprising if they try to find probably a center and a winger of top 6 quality that they can attempt to bring in between trades and free agency. Now, you have to think we don't know at this point really all of the players that will be available in free agency. We know who's on expiring contracts, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to make it there. Some could re-sign with their existing teams, but the Flyers are going to be not afraid to spend right to the salary cap and to get this team back on track. So if Johnny Gaudreau makes it there, I guarantee they'll be going hard after him and to try to get themselves another top 6 center. That's going to be tricky to do, but a couple of names to watch out for would be a guy like Travis Konechny and James Van Riemsdyk. I feel like they're the most likely players that are going to get traded. Within that group, JVR is down to 1 year, making $7 million. If they can find a way to move on from that, to give themselves some more cap flexibility, we really go a long, long way to making some additional moves. And Konechny he still has potential to bloom into a solid 25 to maybe 30 goal scorer. But at this rate, you have to think that they're losing confidence that he's going to be able to be that on any kind of consistent basis. So that tells me that with what we've heard about the Flyers and names that have been mentioned in the rumor mill, that they would be the more likely guys to be moved this offseason. Konechny's young enough with an attractive enough contract that if you look at teams like that are coming out of rebuilds, like the Red Wings or the Senators or the Sabres or any of those teams, that might be a team to look for. Now, hard to say how they're going to get the center iceman. I'm not sure how they're going to accomplish that. It's not going to be easy, but you have to wonder, a team like Philadelphia as well. I know we're going to talk about New Jersey's first round pick, but the Flyers are another team that I really wonder if they would consider trading a first round pick. They're going to be picking fairly high here in the draft. They're probably going to be picking, unless they have luck and win at 1 or 2, which I think if they were picking 1 or 2, they'd probably keep the pick. Otherwise, if they're down around 4 or 5 range, which is the more likely scenario, then I would not be shocked to see Chuck Fletcher trade that pick for a high-end forward. I'm not sure exactly who could be available, but to me, that makes a lot of sense based on how they're going to react. Now, of course, there's a lot of people out there feel that the Flyers need a full rebuild, and I wouldn't completely disagree with that, but I just don't, regardless of what we think they should do, I don't see them doing it. They've made it clear they do not want a rebuild. They want to aggressively retool and get back to the playoffs as quickly as possible, and trading a first-round pick for an impact player would be something that would be possible to help them get there very quickly. So we'll see what happens, but you look around the league, and we're going to talk about this with New Jersey as well, you have to think that the Flyers are in the same kind of category here. They might even be looking at some of the same players. So we'll see. I expect Fletcher to be extremely busy as we approach next month and getting closer to the NHL draft. The Chicago Blackhawks are a team I want to talk about here as well. Of course, we're expecting a major rebuild that's going to take 3 to 5 years to see any level of really competitive hockey out of Chicago, to have them for a chance to compete for playoffs again. A lot of question marks around Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews as they enter the final year of their matching $10.5 million contracts that they signed all those years ago. And at this point, many people thought that it would be a high likelihood that they would one or both would be traded this offseason. However, they both carry a full no-move clause and have full control over that situation, which makes things complicated. It's believed that both players have met with Kyle Davidson. Both players have talked about the future plans of the team as well as their own. But there has been a statement from Kyle Davidson, the GM of the Hawks, saying that there is room and a place for Toews and Kane on this roster next year. So I would say that there's a good chance that maybe they're not dealt. Personally, I don't know if there's going to be much of a market for Jonathan Toews. I think Patrick Kane would have a much better shot at getting moved, but he even said himself before that he enjoys playing with some of the younger players like Alex DeBrincat, and if DeBrincat was still going to be there, he would want to be there. So they may not agree to this if they're being traded anyway, and with the statement saying that there's room for them, I kind of wonder how deep this rebuild is really going to go. I mean, we could still see a few more moves. We're looking at like Dominic Kubalik, maybe Dylan Strome. Those names have been out there a while as well. But when it comes to Toews and Kane, I think now what we're hearing, I think the odds are much lower that we're going to see a trade in that regard. Now in New Jersey, we've talked before about their first round pick being likely up for grabs. We know that the Devils are likely going to be looking at a few different things this offseason. We know Pavel Zacha is available for the right price. We know there's a possibility Miles Wood could be traded. When it comes to their goaltending, Tom Fitzgerald mentioned in his end of the year presser too that they need a guy between the pipes who's an NHL caliber goalie to play a lot of games, and he said he doesn't know who that is. I know Friedman and Merrick on the 32 Thoughts podcast made mention of the fact that the relationship between Mackenzie Blackwood and the team might have some strain and might not be the greatest, and it's not necessarily a one-sided issue, that there's probably things both sides could have done a little bit differently as they navigated through this past couple of seasons. But the Devils are wondering if his development has stalled a little bit, and can he be the starter to take them out of the rebuild? There's certainly some concerns that maybe he won't be. At the very least, that they need to have a goaltender to either play with him as a 1A, 1B, or do they consider trading him and trying to find a way to upgrade at the position? So you have to think that if they're going to trade their first round pick, which has been talked about, because he made it known that even in the last couple of years they've been looking at it and they feel that this team is ready to take a step forward and really be more competitive next year, that trading the first round pick for an impact player is something they would be willing to consider. Now, I know in Vancouver hockey now, they speculated, wondering if that could be JT Miller, who, of course, in Vancouver, we know, is entering the final year of his contract. We've heard from Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin about the year offseason in Vancouver, what's to maybe expect. And Rutherford himself said that they love JT Miller, they'd like to get him signed, but the contract has to work. And if negotiations don't go well, that they're going to trade him. So they're not going to wait around to lose him for nothing. They're not going to wait around into the season and see how things go. I think they're either going to see a contract extension by the time we see the draft or free agency kick in, or we're going to see a trade. One of the two. As soon as the contract will be done, as soon as it's eligible to be, or a trade's going to take place. Now, if a trade takes place, could New Jersey be that destination? It certainly makes you wonder, with a high pick, up for grabs, if that would be something that they would want to do. Now, it may not be a one-for-one kind of scenario, but given the performance from Miller this year, you have to think that he's going to command a first-round pick and probably more than that. So you have to think that's a possibility. I know I also seen it mentioned is maybe they address goaltending that way. It could they go after a guy like John Gibson in Anaheim, who's also been rumored to be on the move, and it's been talked about that maybe a first-round pick and a prospect would be what it likely takes to get Gibson out of the Ducks organization. So you have to wonder, and like I mentioned before with the Flyers and their first-round pick, would they be interested in JT Miller? That's something that Vancouver is going to probably want in return if they did decide to pull the trigger on a trade to send Miller elsewhere if they can't get a contract extension completed. So, therefore, these two teams very well could be big-time players in the JT Miller sweepstakes if things get to that and Vancouver is unable to extend him. Miller can play wing, he can play center, he can be a very versatile piece for Philadelphia as well. So you have to think that both teams are going to be calling Vancouver with some offers here based on comments we've seen on both sides and both teams. So let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.